Hello there, and welcome back to the Doing What Matters podcast. I'm your host, Teresa McCloy, and I am so excited to be with you today on the podcast, where we're going to have more conversations around living from rest, not rush. And I have been talking the last 2 episodes here on the podcast about our brand new circle community that we're forming, the REALIFE Process Circle community. It is absolutely free. And on today's episode, I am having my final guest who will be one of my co-hosts inside of the community. And if you've listened back on the last couple of episodes, you may have heard us talk about this community, but I want to catch you up if you haven't heard those episodes. And here's where this community is coming around. We are coming around 3 different pillars that I think are inside of many of your lives as a listener here at the podcast. As you listen in, we talk around things like your spiritual growth, your personal development. And for those of you who are business owners, we talk about growing your business. And you hear those 3 themes over and over inside of this podcast. And we wanted to bring you a place where you could interact more. And so on today's episode, I actually have my good friend, Victoria Menninger, with me to talk about that business pillar. Victoria will be with me inside of this community, and you'll want to get to know her and become dear friends with her, just like I have. She's one of my dearest friends. She actually serves on our team here at the Real Life Process over this past year as our fractional business manager. And she has helped our team so much that I knew she was the exact right person to sit in this seat. Just like Erica Vinson is sitting in the seat with personal development, and Lindsay Sturkey is sitting in the seat with spiritual growth. All 3 of these women are huge friends of mine inside of my inner circle, and they're the exact right fit to come inside of this free community that we have where you can grow and develop around these 3 different things: business, spiritual growth, personal development, tying in your life story. All of these things really matter to me, and I'm hugely passionate, and I can't wait to invite you in. So before we get to this conversation that I'm going to have with Victoria to get some of her insights on business and what's those foundational things, go ahead and take action and go to therealifeprocess.com and join this community. It'll be right there at the top of the website. Make sure that you take action on that. Therealifeprocess.com. You don't have to put a / or anything. Just go to the website and it'll be right there for you to join the community, set up your profile, bookmark where it's at, and then you and I and all of these other amazing people can interact with you there. So without further ado, I want you to be able to hear Victoria's expertise and her story around business. Because much like you and I, if you sit in the seat of a business owner, you've had some ups and downs in your life, and Victoria has as well. But her experience, the way that she has grown through the challenges that she's had in business and the failures that she's had in business to get back up again, and that resiliency piece is what I love about Victoria and her story. So let's listen in to my conversation with my good friend, Victoria Menninger. Well, Victoria, welcome in. It's so great to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, it's so good to be here, Teresa. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And I'm really excited about diving into this conversation. We've been doing the last few episodes just talking about this new community that we're building that's absolutely free. But I am excited about this one because if you've been listening to the podcast for very long, you know how passionate I am about business, and I know you are as well. This is kind of our sweet spot that we hang out in together. But before we get too far talking about what's going to be in this community around business, I want you to give a little bit just of your backstory as a business owner, as hanging out in this world of business. Just tell us a little bit about where Victoria has been and where she's at now in
Yeah,
relationship to this new community we're building.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I can tell you that sitting here today, 20 years ago, I would not have thought this is where I'd be sitting, right? You know, when you plan out your life, wasn't what I thought, but it has been the best thing. So, yeah, somewhere around, I won't go too far back, but 20 years ago or so, I was just getting into the business world. Partly by default. I just needed a job. And so I found that I was really good at doing books, like bookkeeping and management. And so I started diving in with just working for different companies, which I bring that up because sometimes our start in business is more when we're working for others. And basically, we learn skill in the field, right? And so that was me. I learned skill in the field and learning how to manage the back end of a business. And that was a lot of years, and that turned into leading my own small businesses along the way. Probably the more significant one was back Brian and I, my husband and I, ran a construction company for about 5 years until it had to close in 2018 with the housing crash that happened across the United States. And so, it was running really successfully until it didn't. And so we went through a bankruptcy. And so that'll teach you a lot.
Yes.
Not anything. And so from there, it's been really a rebuild the last 10 to 12 years. And fast forward to 2016. I was still working. I'd gone back to bookkeeping and management, working for companies, and then doing some of my own side work. And I just was ready to transition out of that day to day, like doing the books and all of that. And I wanted to do anything but that. So I decided to look around and see what was possible, and got into construction cleaning. And I won't go into how all that came about, but in 2016 started a little company called Bear Creek. And well, all I knew was that the numbers looked good and I knew how to clean, right? So I'm a mom of four.
You knew how to solve a problem, right? Which is how
Exactly.
so many great businesses start is you saw something that needed that nobody else was doing and you solved the problem.
Right, exactly. And it solved a problem for us personally, helped to bring in some income, and it solved a problem in our local community. And so that began Bear Creek. Now, today, 7 years later, fast forward, we are actually a full scale residential company. My husband is a contractor by trade. And so, about 6 months into launching that business, I hired my own husband.
Which I love that story. We won't go into today, but it's one of the
We will.
greatest parts of the story.
But we just work really well together. So for the past 7 years, we've been building a company together and have a staff of about 23 now. And for about 7 years, I sat in the CEO and integrator role of that company and just learned a ton. I was leading past the point that I was comfortable. I had never led at that level before, and just learned a ton through that. And, building a company, working in a local community, working with a team. And then last spring, really began to sense that God was calling me out to do something else, and wasn't sure all that would look like, but really felt that I needed to take an obedient step to step out. And so Brian and I were on the same page. And so I stepped out of the day-to-day operations of our construction company as CEO and integrator. We were able to raise up a young man in our company to take my integrator position. And honestly, Teresa, he is doing a far better job than I ever did. And that's great, right? When you can raise somebody up to do even better
Yes.
than you did.
Yes.
Yeah. So he has done great in that role. But all of last year, it was really just this time of figuring out what was kind of next for me. And honestly, what was funny about it is that where I landed back up was working with companies in the back end of their business and working with them in that business management space and doing some business coaching. Now that I've had 20 plus years of business operations under my belt, you learn a lot in that. And so being able to come alongside small business owners in the bricks and mortar space and the online space, and just help them really move forward in their businesses. And so that's where I've found myself this year, really launching more publicly in my own small business coaching and consulting, and really enjoying that and loving that.
Yeah. I love all the experience that as you're listening, you hear that Victoria has in her life. And brick and mortar, She also knows the online business world and has learned that a lot even with me in this last year as she serves as our fractional business manager, has done a lot of helping us streamline and learn our numbers and do all kinds of things. Victoria and I have known each other for a long time now, but I love that story because you're honest to say, like, not every business I've had has been a success. And that's my story as well. Like, I've had a, brick and mortar retail business failure. It was hard. Like, that's a hard time to walk through. You and I both have led teams and not led teams. We've been very solo. We've led teams. So as we come into this community that we're building, where we're looking at kind of these three pillars of, you might be coming as a business owner, you might be coming as someone that is working on their personal development, you might be coming as someone who's working in spiritual growth, or if you're like Victoria and I, you might be in all three of those seats. And that's where her and I relate so much. We're passionate about all three areas of our lives, and yet all three of those coming together. But Victoria's going to be joining me every month, both through articles and posts that she's going to be doing and some live conversations, and kind of leading this idea that you can be a business owner that leads from your faith, that leads from leading just a few steps ahead of your team, developing yourself personally. And I've seen you do that, which kind of I want to talk about next is, what are the things that you think are kind of foundational, whether they be personal or business development, for building a business? Are there two or three things that come to mind as you've seen in your own life or in the lives of clients that you've worked with?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that comes to mind, and you and I have talked about this before, but really understanding why you want to go into business or why you're in business. So, when I work with clients, sometimes they're coming to me because they're not sure if they want to scale something and build something, or if they don't really know. And so part of our conversation is, well, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you serving people? Or why do you have a product? And which direction do you want it to go? Do you want it to be a full-fledged business, earning revenue to bring in income to your family? Or is this really a ministry space for you that, if it earns something, great, but if it doesn't, that's okay. Either one is a fabulous choice. It's a fine choice. Just which way are you going? Because until you make up your mind, it's really hard to build something.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Is it where does it fit in to what you need? Is there a certain amount of revenue that you need to bring in? Is this a second income? Are you in a second half of life season? You and I coach people in all those places, or I coach a lot in my local community with business owners, and you've started to step into that space too. And, where does even your brick and mortar, what do you need it to do, and why are you doing it? Is such a foundational piece. What else comes to mind for you, Victoria?
I think the other part is one, when people really want to start a business, say that they go that route, they try to rush and just get business off the ground, and forgetting that when we start a business, it's often for the long game, right? And so part of that long game is building the right foundation. So part of my work comes from small business owners who maybe they started and got something off the ground, a product or a service, and they want to scale or go to that next gear or build with a team, and they can't handle it all because they have no foundation. So of course, I'm in the construction space. So if you think about a house, there's always a foundation to a house. You never see the foundation, but if it was not there, your house is going to crumble, right? And so without a foundation of some systems and processes, things like as simple as bookkeeping and just knowing how you're taking in information and your note, all those things that help you or operate your business, put them in place sooner rather than later.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, you and I talk about that. It's something that we actually have a system and a plan that we have that we use here at the Real Life Process. We won't go into it all today, but we will bring some of that. We call it the Real Life, the 6 Ps, kind of what are the 6 foundational things. And what's interesting to me is those 5, 6, 7 things come around over and over again. Doesn't matter if you're just starting out, if you're in the middle, if you're scaling, you're always coming back to your foundation, right?
Yes.
You're
Yes.
always dealing in these areas. So those are some of the conversations we'll have each and every month, because we seem to draw, whether it's online businesses or brick and mortar businesses. The other thing that I think you and I would both agree as believers is, who are you partnering with in your business? You know, where does your faith story, or where does God fit in to that piece? I would be the first to admit, the first business that I had that really failed, I thought I was doing it, quote, on my own. And I forgot that I had a spiritual place that I could draw from into my business. I was young then. I hadn't realized that kind of this integration of life and work and faith and all of those things. What about for you? Where does that faith piece fit into this idea of business as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it goes back to that understanding your why of why you're doing business. But that first question of why isn't to everybody else around me or to people that I sit with or whatever. It is actually asking the Lord that question. God, why would you have me do this? If this is what an assignment you're giving me, because I look at my work as assignments, the assignment in front of me. Why this assignment? Help me to understand that, and just diving and knowing that again. I mean, I can run a great business with it, but without the foundation of my faith and Christ and really being present with him in relationship, that I'm just going to really struggle in my business. But to your point, I mean, Christ first, and then, you have to bring other people along. Sometimes we try too hard to be an island unto ourselves and have all the answers. Well, you and I know that neither one of us is smart enough to have all the answers.
No, we're not. I know that. Yeah, we agree on that. Like, we said before we started recording, like, some days you're like, I think I kind of know about business, and other days you're like, I don't know that I have a clue. But one thing you mentioned too, as you were talking through, and this is something, just to give a little taste of kind of topics that I want to dive into with you in these conversations, you mentioned building teams. And one of the questions that you and I both have probably as we coach business owners is that idea of being a leader, building a team well, building slowly, and pouring into teams. Talk about just kind of some of your ideas of foundation of a team and how you encourage leaders to build a team in business.
Yeah. Well, and one of the first foundational things of building a team is being able to invest in yourself. Because without that, I know that when we started scaling our construction company and we went from like 12 people, like during COVID, we went from 12 to almost 50 on staff. I had never led 50 people, through all of that. And so I hired an executive coach, an executive business coach, a friend of ours, Michael McGreevy, and that was foundational for me. I needed somebody pouring into me as a leader in order so I could pour into other people that were coming on board with us, because our own health, our emotional health, our physical, all those things are going to matter when it comes to leading a team. And so if we wait to address those things till after we have a team, it gets really, convoluted.
Yeah. So. And I love, like, you reached out, you said, okay, I've got to pour into myself, and we're not going to cover everything in this free community that could be covered. But that's that personal growth piece too. You have to be growing yourself and feeding yourself, body, mind, and spirit, when others are looking to you to lead. I would say one of the biggest mistakes that I have made is probably not bringing people on board soon enough. You've really encouraged me in that, because when you build a business, many times you do start because you have an expertise in something, or you're good at it, or people are asking you, or you see a problem and you fix it like you did. And you get this mindset that like, oh, I'm the only one that can do any of this, So having that other person that's even challenging you sometimes to say, are you really the only one? maybe if you got some help, you wouldn't be working 80 hours a week, or,
Right.
ignoring some of this other things that you say matter to you
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
don't. So I think that's one of the things you've encouraged me in the most is, and I've heard this phrase from like, hire the help you can afford,
Hmm.
pass it off, give them the tasks or the things to do. What are the things only you can do? Those are the
Right.
types of conversations I hope you and I can dive into more
Yeah.
inside
Absolutely.
of this and get your perspective on.
Hmm.
So I want to ask you another thing about this, because we are building a community
Yep.
online, this real life process circle community
Hmm.
where we're talking about all these things. And yet, as a business owner, sometimes you feel like, well, do I really need others? Do I really need a community? Do I get enough from my local space? Like,
Hmm.
what's important to you in community for a business owner?
Yeah, I think it's the relational side of things. You can't go it by yourself. There will be those bad days, and the days where you just can't pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. This is not about doing that, right? And so a community
Mhm.
allows you to be present for who you are and with others who are facing the same challenges, right? And then
Mhm.
even in that, there are times I've been a part of the business communities where somebody might present a solution I hadn't even thought of, and so I think it is that back and forth piece that is so life giving, and just knowing you're not out there by yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, Community is one of my greatest values. This is why I'm so passionate about this. You
Mhm.
mentioned something. I'm gonna get a little real here. Um, what's been one of your greatest challenges that you would say that you're like, we get in those places where we're like, I'm probably the only one that's having this challenge, or do I even want people to know I'm having this challenge? What's been one of your greatest challenges as a business owner?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of challenges, but I think it's doubting myself, right?
Mm,
So lots of people believe in me, and they could look at the outward signs of my success as a business owner, having scaled a construction company, all the things. But then at the end of the day, when I come home, those are those doubts that set in my head of like, can I possibly do this? Especially as I've moved out a very secure role of CEO and integrator in my company, and I had the audacity to step out and start a whole new something. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I can do
you
this.
are an you are an entrepreneur at heart, my friend.
Yeah, but it can be scary out there, and I have those same fears as so many do, even after all these years of failure, but also success.
Yeah.
And so yeah, very human.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. It's one of the things I love about you is that you're willing to share those challenges. And that to me
Mhm.
is one of the greatest gifts of community, too, because sometimes we can feel like we're on an island. I don't care what industry we're in. And you and I have coached across lots of different industries.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, that self doubt piece. But when you can hear someone else say, or you can type a
Mhm.
question, or because this community will not only be live things, you'll meet other people and other
Right.
business owners, and you'll go, oh, you have days like that too. Like, you have times where you doubt, you have times where you're not sure if this is the right direction, or you should make a higher, like, that idea that I'm not alone
Yeah.
in this, I think is one of the greatest pieces. So let me ask you this too. What are you most looking forward to about this community and just being a part of it? What excites you about doing this particular thing?
I think part of it is just doing life with other business owners and watching them grow. Like I
Mhm.
get so much satisfaction when I work with my clients to see them hitting new levels and go into that next gear, but doing it in a healthy way. There is a healthy way to do business without, like you say, living with your hair on fire. And it's so satisfying to watch people just rise and shine,
Mhm.
and to do that in a community. When one rises, what is the saying, when one ship rises, all the other
Yeah.
ships rise too. It's watching each other rise, I think,
Yeah.
is so fun for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am super excited about you and I diving into this topic. As I've
Yes.
shared in the last 3 episodes, all of it belongs. It's all a part of who I am and who we are at the Real Life Process. Everyone on the team, we're all involved in growing ourselves spiritually, growing ourselves personally through the real life process components. And almost everyone that works on our team somehow has their own type of business. So we're all in this together. We can't wait for you to join us. But I wanted you personally, as a listener, to meet Victoria and get to know her just a little bit. You'll get to know her a whole lot more as you become active inside of our community. But I also wanted Victoria to be able to share with you where you could connect with her more, just personally, if you'd like to reach out to her or connect with her in any way. Victoria, I know you have a blog that I'm a huge fan of, and websites and all those kinds of things. Where could people connect with just you personally, besides in the Real Life Process Circle community?
Right. Well, the best way is, like you said, through my website, which is just my name, victoriamenninger.com, MININGER.com. And that's the best place to find me. And there's a contact link in there. Feel free to send me an email. They come directly to me. I see them. So would love to have a conversation.
She would. And while you're there, do sign up for her blog. She writes on a regular basis about all kinds of things, from business to leadership to spiritual walk to personal development. So Victoria, thank you for being here. I cannot wait. Our first kind of live together will be towards the end of February 2024. So we're recording this in January, but about a month from now, we're going to get the community built. We're going to get everybody invited in. And I think about the third week in February, you and I are going to be connecting inside of that community, and super easy to get there. Just go to therealifeprocess.com. You'll see it right on the website, how you can join. You can connect with other business owners. We hope you find some friends inside of there. It's actually how Victoria and I met. She's in Virginia. I'm in Illinois. We met in a space much like what we're creating. And we've become lifelong friends and done so much work and business and life together. So you never know what might happen inside of the Circle community that you can come and be a part of. So Victoria, thanks today for diving in a little bit with me and sharing a little bit.
Yes, looking forward to connecting further.
What a great conversation. I am so excited for you to meet Victoria inside of the community. She just has these wisdom nuggets and these ways of really connecting relationally with people. And I know you're going to love getting to know her and the voice that she'll bring into the room of this community around business. So if you haven't done it yet, make sure you go to therealifeprocess.com and join this free Real Life Process Circle community. You may want to bookmark it on your computer, in your phone, wherever, so that you can come back to it often. And this application, this platform that we're using, actually even has a free app that you can download on your phone. We'll tell you more about that inside the community so that you can have it on your phone or your iPad or your different devices and connect with us in these places. We cannot wait to meet you there and hear your story in all of these things around personal development, business growth, spiritual growth, life story work. It's all going to be happening inside of this community. So you've heard me say it many, many times, and it really is so important to me about remembering that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. Part of this idea of doing life and community together is sharing those moments together. And we can do that when we have a platform in a community such as this. So I look forward to seeing you inside the Real Life Process Circle community. Have a great week.